Hi, my name is Margaret and welcome to my artsy corner of the internet. So I am still, oh no, it's falling. Today I thought I could talk a little bit about ballet again, yay. There are so many different ballets that are performed, and ballet is kind of interesting because we perform a lot of classical ballets, which have been around for some of them like hundreds of years. So it's kind of fun because there's a repertoire, and obviously they're not all the exact same, but a lot of ballets are performed over and over and over again, unlike more contemporary pieces where only a particular company will perform it, or it'll be performed once and then never again, and that kind of thing. But the cool thing about ballet is that there is like this set collection of classical ballets which are still performed all over the world every year, so that's cool. I thought it would be fun to go through and talk about the different plots and history and choreographers and stuff about different ballets, so that if you happen to go see it, or you're gonna be wow, words, if you're gonna be performing in it or anything like that, you know the basic plot rundown history of the ballet. So I thought that we could start with Giselle today because it is one of the older ballets. It is not the oldest ballet, but it is one of the older ballets. Yeah. And it's a pretty well-known ballet, so I thought that we could start there. Let's just get into it. So Giselle is known as a romantic ballet, which means that it was during the era of Romanticism. Romanticism was basically all about emotions and nature and the mythological and being dramatic and emotional, which was coming out of the time beforehand, which was very rational, reasonable, thinking, logic, that kind of stuff. And they kind of turned away from that to go into the more fantastical and emotional kind of turn. So Romanticism was actually an artistic movement that was across all different styles of art. So literature and painting and all music and stuff, they all had a romantic era. Ballet was actually the last art form to kind of be romanticized. So they kind of came in at the tail end. But Romanticism was a very, very popular era of ballet. And so Romanticism kind of began with Les Sylphides, which was like the first kind of romantic ballet, but Giselle was like the height of Romanticism, and honestly kind of the height of ballet in European culture. Another interesting fact is that often ballets of the Romantic period were called ballets blancs, which means white ballets, and they were called this because the romantic tutu came into style during Romanticism, which is like a bell-shaped kind of fluffy tulle skirt, which was a new innovation of this time period. And a ballet blanc basically means that all of the women in the corps wore white tutus. And so this kind of Les Sylphides is a ballet blanc, Giselle is a ballet blanc, Swan Lake, I'm pretty sure, is considered a ballet blanc, even though it's from technically the classical era, not the romantic era. But yeah, that's basically what a ballet blanc is. I feel like I had something. Oh yes, I was also gonna say this. Also during Romanticism, one of the main focal points of it was that male dancers were kind of completely out of fashion by this point. Nobody really wanted to go see men do dance. And so the same kind of thing with the Romanticism and Giselle is that there was a female lead, and the male leads just weren't really explored because people weren't really interested in them. So yes, it premiered in 1841, and since then it has been continuously performed throughout its history. And obviously the Giselle that you go to see today is not going to be the same one that was performed in the 1840s, mostly because of changes in the technique. Dancers are much more athletic now than they were back in the 1800s, so our legs are higher, our jumps are higher, we do more turns, that type of thing. And the other thing is that the technology of the point shoe has also increased a lot, which makes technical point work a lot different than what it was in the 1800s. But the same plot, the same story, and some of the same movement vocabulary has survived for the past 200 years, and it has been regularly performed over the past 200 years, which is pretty cool. So Giselle was premiered June 28th, 1841 at the Paris Opera House. Charlotte Grisi performed as Giselle, and Lucien Petipa, Marius Petipa's brother, Lucien Petipa, Marius Petipa's son, no, not son, Marius Petipa's brother played the male lead. Charlotte Grisi was one of like the star ballet dancers of the Romantic era. I'm gonna read this off. So both Heinrich Heine's book Deutschland from 1835 and Victor Hugo's poem Phantoms. So those two books served as inspiration, but the story goes that Théophile Gautier, a French writer, author who was also known as the first ever ballet critic, saw Charlotte Grisi perform, and he was just so in love with her that he wrote the story of Giselle for her. And that's how the story goes. Little tidbit I learned in my dance history class is that Gautier apparently had like shoulder length hair and wore very like flamboyant clothing, which I just think that you should know for no particular reason, but I think you should know it. Also, this name is a mouthful. It is Jules Henri Vernoy de Saint-Georges. It's also said to have helped create the plot of Giselle. As long as we're just listing people's names, Adolf Adams was the composer of Giselle, and he is also known for using the leitmotif, which, think Star Wars. Every character in Star Wars has their own theme, so when you hear dun 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 dun, you know what character is about to show up, and that is a leitmotif. And Giselle is known for, I think, kind of being the first ballet to use that. So Giselle has a little melody that plays whenever she's about to enter. Jean Coralli was the person who choreographed Giselle, but he choreographed all of the corps ballet parts. And then Jules Perrot was the person who choreographed all of Giselle's or Charlotte Grisi's parts. So there were two choreographers for the first ever Giselle. One person did the corps and the other person did just Giselle. Meaning they kind of use the basis of his choreography, which has been passed down by teachers and word of mouth, over the original choreography. I think also 1880 was less of a romantic period of ballet and more of the classical period of ballet, which was closer technically to modern ballet than romantic ballet, just because of the evolution of the technique, and that's probably why we use petipa as more of our framework than perrot and coralli. Another thing that I thought I should mention is that Giselle is sometimes called the Hamlet of Ballet, and if you ever hear this, I'm going to explain what it means. Hamlet is known as being a very difficult, so whoever is playing Giselle has to have a very raw emotional performance on stage in order for it to portray the story to the audience. So the role in Giselle in ballet is kind of seen as that emotional epitome, challenging role, in the same way that Hamlet is seen in that way in the theater world. So that's just what that means. Now I'm going to explain the plot of Giselle. So stick with me here. Act 1. The ballet is set in a vineyard country bordering the Rhine. Hilarion, the village's game hunter and gatekeeper, is coming home in the morning. He is in love with Giselle and casually loiters outside of her house. At this point, Count Albrecht, it's a ballet, I've never heard these words actually pronounced. Anyway, he arrives with his squire. He's a lord, that's important. Keep that in mind. You know, he's like an aristocrat, not a villager. So the Lord Albrecht arrives with his squire, and he goes into a farmhouse, and emerges not dressed as an aristocrat, but as a peasant. And this peasant that he is now dressed as is known as Lois. So basically, he's a rich man in disguise. But Hilarion sees this and is a little sus about Lois. At this point is then when we meet Giselle, who gets a declaration of love from Lois in early morning, because isn't that how everybody's day starts? Having somebody's undying love for you confessed? I can't personally relate, but maybe you guys can. Then they basically have this cute little moment where they dance, and Giselle plucks the petals off of a flower. You know, you pluck off the petals, you're like, he loves me not. But she doesn't get the love me answer, which you know what that means, right? And basically Lois cheats at the game to make it so that the flower tells Giselle that he loves her. It sounds really, really stupid, but it's cute in the ballet, okay? But then, when they're having this cute little romantic moment, Hilarion comes back and is like, hey, Giselle, guess what? I love you too. You know what that means? Love triangle. And of course, in logical succession, a fight breaks out. But a subtle thing to notice is that Lois reaches for a sword on his hip. Now, this is something subtle that you kind of have to know a little bit about to understand. Only aristocrats, I think that's the technical word, were allowed to carry swords at this point. So peasants wouldn't have carried a sword on their hip. So with that little blunder, Hilarion is like, ooh, you're not a peasant. But at this point, all of the villagers return from wherever they were working, doing something, we don't know, and they all start to dance because this is a ballet. But Giselle's mother comes up to her and says, hey, don't dance too much or else you might die, which seems like a very strange declaration and is definitely not foreshadowing at all. Then in the distance you can hear a hunting horn being played, which means that there is a hunting party coming. And Lois just books it out of there. He says, I gotta go, because this hunting party is most likely made up of nobility or aristocrats, and he does not want to be recognized. So this hunting party arrives, and it's a bunch of nobility, and the prince's daughter, Bethild, Bethalde, I think it's Bethild. I don't know. It doesn't matter how to pronounce it. It's a ballet. There's no talking. The prince's daughter, though, Bethild, is there, and she talks to Giselle, and basically they're both like, oh my gosh, we're both engaged to marry. And Bethild is like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, and gives Giselle a necklace as a present, saying, I'm so excited that we are both engaged. No foreshadowing. Nope. Not even a little bit. And then Hilarion breaks into Lois' cottage and is basically doing some snooping because he's sus. And then we get to the next scene where Giselle is declared the queen of wine. Then the scene shifts again and the villagers are back and Giselle is declared the queen of the wine festival because... But Hilarion, the real buzzkill, comes in and steals all the thunder and is like, hey, you know that peasant Lois, he's not really a peasant, he's Lord Albrecht. Oh, he's a nobleman. Okay, anytime that I said aristocrat, just imagine that I said nobleman. So after Hilarion exposes Lois / Lord Albrecht, Lois tries to deny it, saying, nah, I'm just a peasant like all of you guys. But the horn sounds once again and the hunting party comes back, this time confirming that Lois is in fact a nobleman. But it gets worse. Not only is Lois a nobleman, which we already kind of knew, he is also a dog. He is also Bethild's fiance. Remember that moment earlier where she gave Giselle a necklace because they were both engaged? Yeah, they're engaged to the same man. And that dog is not happy about it either. So at this point, Giselle has what you might call a nervous breakdown and dies. There are different ways in which this is handled, but most people say that it is due to a broken heart. And this is also where the famous mad scene comes in and is why Giselle kind of got that Hamlet of Ballet title, because the mad scene is a difficult dance to perform and not make it feel comical. You really have to sell that you're dying of a broken heart without making it cheesy. So another thing to mention in the Romantic Ballet period is that the idea of mythical creatures was a huge deal. Every romantic ballet or romantic book had something to do with willies or what are other ones? Sylphides or basically just like a lot of different mythical creatures. A lot of the female leads were portraying these mythical otherworldly beings. So in this particular world of Giselle, if you die with unrequited love, you become a willie, which is a mythical creature, and that's all you really have to know about them. But they are a bunch of women who died with unrequited love. And that's what happened to Giselle. So the second act starts in the forest near Giselle's grave. I know, morbid, right? Welcome to Romanticism. So basically, the queen of the willies, Martha? I'm gonna call her Marta, because I don't know how to pronounce her name properly, obviously. Anyway, she basically calls together all of these willies to help initiate Giselle into their little club. What do they do in said willies club? Well, I'll tell you. Basically, these women have been doomed eternally to walk the earth from midnight to dawn because their unrequited love will not let them rest. Tragic. And what do they do to pass this time wandering the earth? Well, they trap men in the forest and make them dance until they die. So Hilarion is in the forest because, I don't know, apparently he's never heard of these willies that will make him dance until he dies. Like, why are you going into the forest at night, you know? But anyway, Hilarion is mourning at Giselle's grave. Obviously he's never heard of the willies though, because they're there too. But they make him dance until he dies, because that's what I just told you, that it's like their whole thing that they do. Yeah, so Hilarion dies. But then also Count Albrecht is also in the forest, and if you don't remember, he is also Lois the peasant, who isn't actually a peasant, and he is also going to Giselle's grave to mourn because he feels really, really bad that he was engaged to two women at the same time, and it was really all of his fault. But he feels really bad, and so he's bringing flowers to Giselle's grave in the middle of the night. But when he gets to the grave, he also encounters the willies. So they're gonna force him to dance until he dies, because as I already established, that's really all they do. You know, they could like start a book club, maybe like knit something, but no. But because this is a love story, Giselle dances with Count Albrecht until 4 a.m. specifically, or I guess just dawn. And because of her love and her dancing with him, she saves his life. Yay! Kind of happy ending, kind of sad ending. We'll call it bittersweet. So yeah, I mean, Giselle was really the height of ballet, especially in Europe. Romanticism was the most popular era of ballet, and Giselle was really the height of the Romantic era. And so, yeah, Giselle was pretty cool. So I think that's about all I have to say on Giselle. I hope this was helpful. If you're going to see Giselle, hopefully you'll be able to follow the story a little bit better now. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe as usual. Follow me on Instagram. I sometimes post pictures of me dancing and stuff like that. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. Bye.